Okay, so I've started that just now. So I would like to introduce everyone to Sarah Hesp. Today, Sarah is one of our adjudicators. Sarah, do you want to give yourself a wee introduction and a wee bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Paula. Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see so many people here and to see so much interest in this webinar this morning. I've been an adjudicator at SafeDeposits since 2013, so nearly 10 years. It's amazing how the time flies when you're enjoying yourself. I came to SafeDeposits from a career as a chartered surveyor. I've been a chartered surveyor since 1990, specialising in residential property. And along the way, I also acquired a law degree. And in my spare time, when I'm not working for SafeDeposits, I'm also a member of the First Tier Tribunal of Scotland Housing and Property Chamber. So that's a little bit of background about me and my experience.
Very varied. What got you to becoming an adjudicator? What was that path like? How do you go from a chartered surveyor to an adjudicator?
Well, I guess that for me, I was interested in taking a role where I was in a decision-making place, and also which involved property, because obviously that was my background. And I was interested in this kind of impartial position, you know, where you're making clear, reasoned decisions. And I was interested in how it all worked, and I guess that I've enjoyed it so much that I've stayed.
You've just stayed, yeah. I remember when you joined, because there wasn't much between us starting. So we're very well entrenched into all things adjudication at this point, I feel.
We have been here a while, haven't we, Paula? Yes.
A while. We're in the midst of planning our 10th birthday party. I can't believe SafeDeposits have been up and running for 10 years come July. It's crazy. Yeah. Remember when that was very new and everyone was finding their way, and it's just second nature to everyone at this point.
Yes, yeah, amazing.
I'm going to ask you the golden question here is, what is an adjudicator? Like, if you could summarise that, if nobody had ever heard of one before, how would you describe it?
Yeah, well, I guess that adjudication in itself is a means of dispute resolution where parties have a problem, and it's a way of resolving these kind of disputes outside of the court system. So an adjudicator makes an impartial decision based on the information in front of them and based on their experience, without actually calling on the parties in front of them and asking them lots of questions. So it's not what we would call inquisitorial, where we're kind of drilling down into the evidence. We're looking at the evidence as it's presented to us in front of us and making a decision based on that. But yeah, it's really a way of decision-making outside the court system to try and make things quicker and clearer and just easier for everybody involved.
And for lack of a better term, does the adjudication outcomes carry as much clout as perhaps a court decision would?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because of course court decisions make precedents. Yep. So really what we do as adjudicators is keep an eye on court decisions, and if there are precedents, then we follow them. So as adjudicators, we're not setting precedents in quite the same way that courts do. But obviously, if at SafeDeposits you opt for an adjudicator's decision, then you're not also able to cherry pick that decision and decide to go to court afterwards. It's really a once and for all final decision in much the same way that a court decision is.
Okay. So when you get the sort of the evidence reaches you, how do you approach each case? What's your sort of method? What are you looking for and all that sort of thing?
So the first thing that I do when I look at a case is I look at the things that the landlord's claiming for. So I set out the basis of the landlord's claim. I look at whether they're claiming for cleaning, damage, if they're claiming for damage, the kind of things that they're looking at. And then I'll take the tenant's statement and look at that against what the landlord says. Just to see whether or not we've got any areas where, you know, there might be no need for me to adjudicate, where either we've got an admission from the tenant that they have done something and they're responsible for something, or where they actually agree one of the landlord's claims. So I take each statement that the landlord makes and the tenant makes, and I set it kind of against each other. And then having looked at that, then I'll work through the evidence that's been submitted in respect of each item of claim. So I'll take the landlord's evidence first, look at whether they've submitted evidence that proves their claim for cleaning or rent arrears, etc. And then again, I'll look at what the tenant says in respect of each of those items, and look at that. So there is a method to my madness. Different adjudicators do it in slightly different ways, but that's the way that I do it.
I remember, gosh, it must be a few years ago now, maybe about 2017. You'll probably remember when they sent all the adjudicators under the TDS umbrella, all the same evidence pack to see what the outcome would be.
Yes.
Slightly different. It was by sort of like £20. Really, the wording might be different and the awards were ever so slightly different, but it was very cohesive, and it was very, what's the word? Very consistent how the adjudicators are approaching cases. So although you might not get the same one, you're going to get the same fair treatment from them all.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, consistency is really important to us. Yeah. So, we do all follow the same principles and apply all the same principles to the cases that we have. So, so yes, there shouldn't be, although every adjudicator obviously follows the evidence that they have. If the same adjudicator was to look at the same pack of evidence, as you say, there shouldn't be that much difference between the outcomes. No.
You touched on something just a second ago that crops up for us quite often, and that's like tenant admissions. And sometimes you'll see cases come through where the tenant might allude to accepting liability or making an admission, but the landlord perhaps still isn't awarded, or they're not awarded the full amount. And that can confuse them a little bit, because landlords will take the view, the admission is there, why haven't I been given it all by default? And if you could just chat around that for a wee second to explain what your needs are in that capacity.
It depends very much what the tenant says, Paula, really, when they make their admission. I mean, if it's a clear acceptance of the claim and they say that we've got a cleaning claim of £100 and the tenant says, I accept the landlord's cleaning claim for £100, that's black and white, that's easy to interpret. Obviously, some admissions are less easy to interpret and still require some judgment from the adjudicator. So if the tenant says, there were some oversights in the cleaning claim, I accept that there was still some work to be done, then obviously the adjudicator has regard to that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the tenant's accepting the whole amount. So we still have a job to do as an adjudicator to look at what's reasonable and proportionate for the tenant to pay.
Yeah, and that's really helpful, because we see that often, and I guess it's one thing coming from us in our ivory towers of being removed from the case and given feedback. So it's really nice to actually hear that from the adjudicator themselves, that you still are limited even with that in place. What makes a good submission for you? Like when you get it in your desk and makes things easy and it's super straightforward, what's a good submission?
So the first thing that makes a good submission, obviously looking at what the landlord needs to do, first of all, is it's very important for the landlord to set out their claim very clearly when they have the opportunity to do so. So they're given that opportunity on a blank sheet of paper, basically. And blank sheets of paper can be dangerous because they can kind of encourage people to go a bit off piste. But if the landlord's very clear about their claim, say they're claiming £100 for cleaning, £50 for damage and £20 for replacement light bulbs, then if they set out exactly why they think they should, their cleaning claim should be successful under one heading, and then their damage claim under another heading, and their light bulb claim under another heading, make absolutely clear how much you're claiming under each head of claim. And if you are claiming for more than one item, so you've got a damage claim and it's for 20 items, make absolutely clear that you're setting out how much you're claiming in respect of each item. Because it's important to say why you think.
So
it's important to say why your claim is justified in each case, but actually setting it out under side headings is absolutely crucial. If you write a rambling essay for 200 words, saying what the tenant did, what they didn't do, then that's unlikely to ground your claim. We really need to know from you what evidence you're going to put forward in support of your claim.
So so basically invest and spend the time on that overview of the dispute, and you know, everything you want to have considered, make sure it's there, that it's concise, itemized. Yeah. The
itemization is so important, you know, because so often adjudicators find themselves looking through invoices, trying to work out, you know, what the landlord's claim is. And we shouldn't have to do that. We're not here to make or second guess a claim. We're here to adjudicate based on the landlord's claim as it's set out to us.
And once you've got that good overview, if we talk about the kind of the basic pillars of evidence, what's your key documents that you would then be moving forward to look into?
Well, first of all, it's the tenancy agreements.
Yeah.
You know, the tenancy agreement's absolutely fundamental. And we still see lots of cases, don't we, Paula, where people don't put in a tenancy agreement or submit an incomplete tenancy agreement. They maybe just submit a few clauses that they think the adjudicator might like to see. But you know what, we need to see the whole document. You know, we need to see the whole of that tenancy agreement, because there may be clauses in there that rely on each other. So we need to see the whole thing. So that's number one fundamental thing. And if you miss submitting that to us, then I think we can say, Paula, that on every occasion we would come back to you and ask for it.
We will. It's the one document that we will by default come back and ask for. So prior to getting to an adjudicator, once the evidence has been submitted, a member of the adjudication team, and you may have spoken to Cameron or Sam or Jamie at some point in your dispute journey, they're looking to make sure that tenancy agreement is in place. And if it's not there, they'll give you a little prompt and they'll ask for it. Other pieces of evidence, I'm sure you'll touch on, Sarah, it's down to your discretion whether or not you need that or whether you can ask for it. But certainly, because the tenancy agreement is so vital, we will 10 times out of 10 come back and request it.
Yeah, I would say it's unusual for adjudicators to come back and request evidence. You know, there has to be a really good reason why we would request evidence. You know, we see a fundamental flaw in the evidence pack that's been sent to us that means that we can't adjudicate properly for some reason. Then we would try and go back to the parties for more evidence. But really, the parties should be submitting their evidence pack to us on a right first time basis. So everything in there is what they want the adjudicator to see. You know, parties really shouldn't rely on us checking over their evidence submissions and coming back to them if we think they've got something wrong. That isn't how it works.
It's nice courtesy. As harsh as that sounds, it's a nice courtesy, isn't it? So we've got your overview, we've got your tenancy agreement. What's next?
Well, as adjudicators, we really like to see good, well set out check-in and check-out reports. If you're claiming for cleaning, damage, redecoration, missing items, removal of items, then they're absolutely essential. And those check-in and check-out reports should be clearly written, should be absolutely contemporaneous as far as is possible, barring a few days here and there with the start and the end of the tenancy, and should be obviously relating to the property that the dispute's about. And I say that with a smile on my face because that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we see the wrong check-in and check-out reports sent to us.
And I guess that's for agents, if they've got a file that's just 123 Main Street, they're kind of dragging and dropping the wrong ones over, but it's so important to make sure it's the correct one.
And those check-in reports, it's really important that they cover the whole property. This is something else that we see quite a lot, and I think you'd agree with this, Paula. People sometimes can't quite understand why, if they're claiming for gardening, the adjudicator doesn't make an award at all. And quite frequently it's because there's no garden in the check-in inventory or there's no garage in the check-in inventory. And so we can't see whether or not there are items to be removed from the garage at the end of the tenancy, because we don't know what was in there at the start because the garage wasn't on the check-in inventory. So, you know, it's important, if you are assembling a check-in inventory, that it actually covers the whole of the property, and it's got all those areas in where you might be wanting to make claims.
Yeah, And when you've got things like invoices and quotes and receipts, is one stronger than the other? Will you just automatically award whatever's on that quote or the invoice? And what are you looking for there?
No, we won't automatically award based on a quote or an invoice. We like invoices better than quotes because obviously they're an indication that work has been done. And so they do actually establish that the landlord has suffered a financial loss, which is ultimately what we're looking for. We're looking for that financial loss to the landlord. But we won't necessarily award the full invoiced amount. There are other things that I think we'll come on to a bit later on, Paula, like betterment and fair wear and tear that we take into account, which quite frequently mean that less than the invoiced amount is awarded for. But invoices more than quotes. But we don't need either. You know, we can make our own decisions and our own judgments without invoices and quotes. Then they're not absolutely essential, but they are nice to have.
Again, you've just led me into one of the questions that we had further on is when you're making sort of reduced claims. So if a landlord has asked for £100 for cleaning and you've awarded 75, where do you get those figures from? And again, that links into where you don't have invoices or quotes. And it's just about explaining that these are educated and informed decisions that you're making and where these numbers are coming from.
Very informed. All the adjudicators who work in Scotland have worked in Scotland for a long time, have come from, and some of them work part-time, some of them still work in the property industry. We're all very experienced in the field that we're working in. So we all have a good idea about the cost of things, the cost of cleaning, the cost of repairs. So we're all making those decisions based on information, on our own experience, as well as the evidence that's put forward to us. You know, we've all seen cleaning claims in Aberdeen. We all know, you know, what a normal pricing of a cleaning claim in Aberdeen looks like. So we have figures in our heads when we're looking at claims. So if we're not making full awards, then it's based on a wide range of experience, I would say, over the whole of Scotland.
Because I know as well, we talk about this when we do the training externally, that you guys have a terrific geographical knowledge of the market and what things tend to cost, and how, for example, Aberdeen is probably much more expensive than Stirling, than Falkirk, and you're applying all of that. So it's not the figures are just being plucked out of thin air, they're coming from really solid backgrounds.
Yeah, that's right. We don't pluck figures out of thin air.
No, absolutely.
and we do talk to each other. We do talk to each other as adjudicators. You know, we do kind of, sometimes we'll just chew over the kind of figures that we're awarding, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And for example, just now, you know, we're well aware that costs are going up in the building industry. So, you know, landlords' costs will be going up when they're having repairs done and the like, and we're alive to those sort of changes as well.
Okay. If we look back to kind of evidence and submissions and things, if you could wave a magic wand and fix something, what's a recurring evidence failure that you would love to remove forever that would just make life much easier for you as an adjudicator?
Unlabeled, undated photographs, very large numbers of them. Every submissions that contain every photograph that has ever been taken of a particular property, sometimes they run to 500 photographs. And that's what I would like to wipe out. I would like to see landlords really limited to photographs that relate to their claims. Because although landlords obviously know their properties very well, and they can tell which is a living room and which is a bedroom, an adjudicator obviously has never visited that property and cannot necessarily tell in a 5-bedroomed house which is bedroom 3 when those photographs aren't labelled.
And particularly when they're all the same neutral colour as well.
So yes, if you're looking at quality of submission, I would say, you know, we like to see photographs, and there are times when photographs can be really useful. For example, in gardening claims, if you've got a photograph of a garden taken at the start of the tenancy and at the end of the tenancy, and it's and the angle is the same, you know, so it's taken across the garden. We can see the lawn, we can see the borders, you know, those kind of photographs taken at the same angle and taken contemporaneously with the start and the end of the tenancy can be really helpful. But lots and lots of unlabeled, undated photographs are very frustrating, particularly when the adjudicator has to open up each photograph and look at the metadata to establish when that photograph was taken. And adjudicators will do that. And we can tell when photographs are marketing photographs rather than photographs taken at the start of the tenancy. So, you know, just bear in mind that if you are going to use photographs, then you need to make sure that you submit them in a good way, in a labeled, dated fashion.
Yeah, and they're relevant. And the other thing we see is people, we live in an age where everything's taken on our phones, and we see select off and upload, and we see family holidays and things like that, and it might give us a bit of a chuckle at the time, but you're just muddying the waters, aren't you? Using valuable time that you could be spending on the case. So just make sure you're putting the correct ones, on.
Yes.
Obviously, we know that photos are there to supplement your inventory, and it's to lend weight to that. A question we're seeing more across safe deposits is people looking to, I guess, get a bit more technical with it and move with the times, and they're asking if video inventories are better. And from my position, I can see the pros and the cons to that, but for you as an adjudicator, would a video really be any better than the written word?
My own view is no. I don't like to see video inventories, really. People think that a quick whiz around a room with a video camera shows everything, but actually it's very difficult to see everything in a video. If you have a proper written inventory, then quite often the written word is as important as photographs and pictures, frequently more important, because it's a representation of each individual item in that property. Very frequently inventories say, the property and all the items it contains are in good condition unless otherwise stated, or some sort of default clause like that. If you have a video, then you don't have that kind of overarching default clause. People quite frequently take videos very quickly and whiz around and don't open drawers and just do quick walkarounds. And very frequently you can't see anything from that. An adjudicator has to watch a whole video, which might be 20 or 25 minutes, to try and find the chip in the worktop.
Yeah. And it's quite nauseating as well when you're watching something filmed on a mobile phone on a laptop or PC-sized screen. I imagine that quite unsettling to try and follow that.
I have had occasions actually where I've had to walk away from the video because I feel quite ill. Because quite often they're quite fast. They tip around a lot.
For me, it's the silent walkthroughs of the empty property is really creepy, and I'm always waiting on something jumping out somewhere.
Yes, those spooky things. And again, people don't always tell you what room they're in.
No.
And whereas, you know, we can recognize kitchen and bathrooms. We're quite good at stuff like that. Again, we can't tell if we're in bedroom 1, 2, or 3 quite frequently.
No. I'm just going to move into some kind of topical things that crop up. Obviously, we don't have time today to go over every single scenario that might appear in adjudication, but some common ones, particularly with the student high volume accommodations, are things like mattresses. You know, if there's stains or marking on a mattress at the end of a tenancy, as an adjudicator, what are you looking for from landlords? Because I feel landlords sometimes can be very quick to jump straight to replacement. And of course, this is not something we can always facilitate. And if you could just give us your view on that.
It's a fundamental principle of compensation that a landlord's required to mitigate their loss. So as an adjudicator, we're looking to give a reasonable and proportionate award where there is damage of any nature. So in a situation like mattress stains, and we do see this a lot, we would, unless the stain is very, very, very bad, and we would agree with the landlord that we would go straight to replacement already, we would expect the landlord to attempt cleaning before actually going down the road of replacement. That's part of the mitigation of their loss. So in a situation where you have a few small stains on a mattress, then we would expect mattress cleaning to take place prior to going down the route of replacement. You know, we've tried to clean it. This is what happened. We couldn't get the stains out, and therefore we are moving to replace.
It's unreasonable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all about the mitigation of that loss, and it's not an idea that Safe Deposits comes up with. The mitigation of loss is a compensatory principle that has come down over the years from all sorts of court cases on all sorts of different subjects. So it's the adoption of that principle.
And you'll know yourself as well. We see a lot of claims for mattress protectors. And obviously what you're looking to do is establish whether there's been a financial loss, following breach of obligations. Could you cement for us, please, Sarah, your take on mattress protectors from the adjudicator themselves?
Absolutely. So mattress protectors come in all sorts of qualities, like many other things. Quite frequently, we see landlords just using quite cheap mattress protectors. You know, you're talking about student accommodation. We'll maybe see the £15, £20 mattress protector on a bed. And we would say that that is a consumable item, which it's part of the landlord's maintenance cycle to replace at the end of every tenancy. As a matter of hygiene, we wouldn't expect the landlord to expect to reuse that mattress protector through a series of tenants. It just would not be good practice. So we say that it's the responsibility of a landlord to replace those mattress protectors at the end of every tenancy as part of their usual maintenance cycle.
Perfect. If we touch on betterment a little bit, because this is something that landlords find quite tricky to quantify sometimes. I can totally see their point of view. You know, if you've got a worktop that's been burned, you know, common sense is that you can't just pick out a little bit and slot it in. Could you give us a little bit of background to your limitations when it comes to betterment, and that you're not just being unfair or a bit renegade with your awards, and why you have to approach things the way that you do? Yeah.
So again, betterment isn't an idea that's been made up by Safe Deposits. It's a compensatory principle that has come down over the years. And I first came across betterment when I used to buy land for motorways, and I was moving businesses on when we were running motorways across yards and across their lands, because betterment isn't allowed in assessing compensation for land compensation and business removal any more than it is in tenancy deposit matters. So under the principle of betterment, as we take it from the courts, a landlord is not permitted to benefit at the expense of a tenant. So in a simple example, in a cleaning situation, if the property wasn't professionally cleaned at the start of a tenancy, then the landlord cannot expect to have the property returned to them cleaned to a better professional standard at the end of a tenancy, because that's better. Betterment is something better.
Yeah.
So in that situation, in the cleaning scenario, then an adjudicator will not award the full amount claimed for a professional clean, but will award a discounted amount to reflect betterment. Similarly, a landlord isn't entitled to improve their property at the expense of a tenant. So, for example, an easy example is a carpet. So the tenant, I don't know, drops red wine on the carpet and there's a big stain at the end of the tenancy and it can't be removed. The landlord decides to replace the carpet. That replacement is justified, but not on a full replacement cost basis. That replacement cost has to be depreciated for betterment and for wear and tear, but mainly betterment, because it wasn't a new carpet when the tenant moved in. It wasn't a new carpet at the end of the tenancy. So if the landlord received the replacement cost of the carpet at the end of the tenancy, they would be receiving more than the carpet is worth.
Yeah.
And we can't let that happen. We have to apply the principle of betterment.
Yeah. We see it in redecoration a lot as well, don't we? Where tenants maybe mark a part of the wall. And of course, you can't just patch it and you can't just paint one wall, because then that stands out against the other three. So landlords logically are probably going to paint the full room, and it's disappointing when they get the proportionate award back away. And we try and do a lot of work and a lot of education around fair wear and tear and betterment. And sometimes I think it feels a bit like a tough pill to swallow for landlords.
Yeah, and I understand that. I do understand that, and but it is just one of the principles that we have to apply when we're actually making an adjudication decision, which at the end of the day is a quasi-judicial decision.
Yeah.
It is the kind of decision you would get from a court. So we have to apply the same principles that the courts apply.
Mm-hmm. And this is why we have, I don't know if anyone who's attending today has been through adjudication, but the first stage we have is self-resolution. And that's where a member of the adjudication team, not an adjudicator yet, but it would be myself, Sam, Cameron, Jamie, would do a bit of kind of digging into your case and find out why you're asking, what you're asking for, etc. And our goal is to try and help you resolve a dispute without the need to go through evidence gathering into an adjudicator. In cases where betterment are certainly come under question, like your worktops, your decor, your carpets, these are prime candidates for self-resolution, because through discussion with tenants, we're probably more likely to be able to negotiate a better outcome for you than what the adjudicators are limited to be able to award. So what I would say is, if you can see a claim coming, give us a call ahead of time so we can give you the best advice. And if you end up in adjudication, please use the self-resolution mechanism. So you're nodding away there, because you know that you've seen yourself it works. Since we brought it in, we're at 53% of cases are resolved without having to go to an adjudicator, which means the truly sticky, difficult or entrenched ones are the correct ones that reach the adjudicator's desk. And you're not getting muddied down in counterclaims and all that sort of stuff.
And the best thing about self-resolution, Paula, is it's quick, isn't it?
It's very fast. Very fast.
You know, with the best will in the world, when a case is referred to an adjudicator, we've got several stages to go through before you get your decision. And you don't have to go through any of those stages, obviously, at self-resolution. So you don't have that 10-day evidence gathering stage and that 10-day evidence gathering stage for the landlord and the tenant, and then the 20-day period for adjudication. And before you know it, you've got 2 or 3 months gone and you've still not got your decision. Yeah.
Whereas in self-resolution, and we can close that off as soon as we have confirmation from both parties that they're happy with the figure. We say repayment will be with you within a maximum of 5 working days, because legally that's our KPI. But the reality is you probably get it in about a day or two. So what we're doing is we're cutting down an 8 to 12 week long process of adjudication to potentially a week or less, and we can get closing, everybody can move forward with life. So if you were to take anything else away from today, it would be to consider self-resolution as well for these kind of anything. We always say self-resolution is perfect for those cases that you feel are maybe a little bit tricky, or there's a technicality, or maybe you're a letting agent who's taken over a property from someone else and they don't have things like the check-in report and all that there. These are ones we'll probably be more likely to help you with, because we know if you go to adjudication, Sarah, there's not much you're going to be able to do without the relevant papers in place.
No, absolutely. If you haven't got that full evidence package, a tenancy agreement, a check-in report, a check-out report, then you're very unlikely to be successful at adjudication.
Because what we can do is, when we have these conversations, we'll get all the information we need from you as a landlord, and we'll ask a bit about evidence. We might ask to see it. And what we can do is talk to the tenant. And if they're sort of coming around to, yeah, I agree there was cleaning, but I disagree with the amount, then we'll get into the area of, well, what are you happy to part with? And then we can work with you both and try and get some sort of happy medium for you. We did have a question from a tenant, actually, Sarah, which probably would be helpful for this audience too. Is they're asking about unfair or illegal premiums, and how, as a tenant, do they identify what's an unfair charge or a premium, and how that ties into adjudication cases.
Yeah. So this is something gosh, 10 years ago, we used to see a lot of kind of one-off payments, didn't we? Like fees for check-in inspections and fees for checkout inspections. And obviously over a period of time, the legislation has changed and a lot of these one-off payments for tenants have been ruled out. I'm pleased to say that England and Wales seem to be catching up with us now, Paula, on this. It's taken a little bit of time, but I think they're getting there. So a premium payment, only the first tier tribunal can decide whether or not a charge is a premium payment. In terms of a premium payment, it's any charge which is neither rent or the deposit in relation to a tenancy. Strictly speaking, that is the definition of a premium payment. If it's not rent and it's not the deposit, then normally we would say the tenant shouldn't pay for it. Now, within that very broad umbrella, there are exceptions to that. And one of the things that we see that might at one time have been regarded as a premium payment, for example, is a holding fee. And as long as a holding fee is actually incorporated into the deposit now, that's not regarded as a premium payment. Check-in and check-out inspection fees, yes, I'm afraid that they are premium payments and we wouldn't allow for those. Sometimes we see claims for deposit processing fees. They're a premium payment, we wouldn't accept those. But occasionally we do see cases where a landlord establishes that they have made a financial loss because of a claim for the organisation of work that they've carried out, and they've had to pay the agent for work that's been carried out. And we would consider whether or not claims in those kind of situations are justified, as long as they're well and properly established by the landlord or the agent, and they show that there's actually been a financial loss that has arisen because the tenant has breached their obligations under the tenancy agreement. Really, they're less in the nature of premiums and more in the nature of damages rather than damage, but a damages claim. And so we may consider those if the tenancy agreement allows and obviously the law allows. But very, very, very few of those are actually allowed by adjudicators, and we don't really see very many come across our desks now.
They're very few and far between now. I think the last one I saw was about 6 months ago, and it was like factor fees that had been built into the contract.
Oh, okay.
Or boiler maintenance. You know, a landlord was holding a tenant accountable for annual boiler maintenance, and that's not for the tenants to be picking up on, but we don't see them too often. Like I said, that was one that came through from a tenant when we were doing a bit of research and asking for questions. Clearly they've been stung by at some point in life and they just wanted
it's nice to hear from tenants sometimes. We hear from landlords and agents a lot. It's nice to hear from a tenant with a question sometimes.
Tenant outreach is so difficult. We do a lot of work to try and speak to tenants because it's very all well and good them knowing their rights, but it's also very important for them to understand their obligations and how they should be behaving in a property, etc. And since time began, we've hosted webinars, we've done seminars in person, we've had conferences, we've done all sorts of things, and it's really difficult to get people to attend because as a tenant they're only really interested in their deposit when they're paying it, and then when it comes to get it, because it's not a very sexy subject, it's not something they're dealing with every day, so trying to get tenants engaged has been tricky for us. It's been one of the positives of the kind of first lockdown that we had. We saw more uptake of webinars, and we actually had a few where we ended up with landlords and tenants on the same session. And it was really nice to see the sort of everyone's on the same page and, you know, breaking down this perceived barrier that it's like one side versus another. And really it's not. Everyone just wants to have a harmonious time, and it's about working together and what they can do. If we stick to tenancy, stick to tenant side of things, everyone here probably at some point in time will have experienced the good old tenant changeover. So where you have 3 tenants, one moves out and another replaces them. What are you looking for in evidence if there's a claim where there's been a tenant changeover?
So tenant changeovers are a bit of a bugbear, aren't they, really? Because, you know, we know what we would like to see in a in an ideal world, we would like to see a check-in inventory and a check-out report at the start and the end of every tenancy. Obviously, when you've got people in place in a property and you're just moving over one tenant, and that's quite frequently difficult to do. And we do understand that, but what we would expect is that any incoming tenant would see a copy of an inventory for them to comment on when they move into a property. And so if any tenant goes into a property, we would expect them to have the opportunity to go around that property with the inventory and either accept or make comments on the inventory that they've been given. Now, very frequently, we don't see any evidence that a tenant's actually received an inventory. We just have an outdated inventory with tenant changeovers going through. So we can't say that the inventory is contemporaneous with the tenancy agreement, that all the tenancies have necessarily seen that all the tenants have necessarily seen that inventory. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for both parties to have an opportunity to review the property at the start of their tenancy agreement. So we would expect to see some sort of signed declaration by tenants as they come in to say that they've received an inventory, that they've looked at the inventory and that they accept its contents.
Perfect. When you first came on here earlier on, you were talking about you're a member of the first tier tribunal as well. Can you tell us a wee bit about that? What are you doing with the FTT?
Yeah, so I sit on the first tier tribunal as a surveyor member, an ordinary surveyor member. And most of the cases that I deal with are cases involving the repairs to properties, repairing standard cases, where tenants make applications to say that the landlord hasn't kept the property in a proper state of repair. I personally also deal with factoring cases involving property factors, where people feel that the property factor hasn't stuck to the code of conduct that's laid down by the Scottish Government.
Yep.
And I deal with some civil proceedings cases, but I tend not to deal with tenancy deposit cases or letting agent cases, because obviously I'm aware that there may be a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question. Do your roles ever intertwine with one another between?
Yeah, I have to make sure that they don't, really, because that wouldn't be fair, because I'm always, whether I'm sitting at the first tier tribunal or at SafeDeposits, I'm very careful to have that kind of fair and impartial head on.
Yep.
And make sure that I'm not favouring either the landlord or the tenant in anything that I'm doing, making sure that we're just going down a fair and reasonable and proportionate avenue, really. Yep. So no, I try not to let them intertwine, although and I've never been to a property as a first tier tribunal member that I've also dealt with as an adjudicator.
Obviously, the FTT and adjudication, they're quite different from one another. In your role as an adjudicator, what sort of limitations do you have in terms of, I guess a common one is claims in excess of the deposit, cases that you can and can't consider, this sort of thing? Yeah, so that's the biggest one for me as an adjudicator, Paula, as you quite rightly say. It's that I'm limited by the deposit. I can't make any award for more than the deposit. So, you know, if a landlord has had a really unfortunate experience and has had a terrible tenant in the property that has done all sorts of damage to it, but the deposit's only £400, I can only award £400. Obviously, there are other places that the landlord can go to try and recoup his losses in other ways. The first tier tribunal obviously is one of those. So even if we award the deposit, you can still then go forward to the first tier tribunal, bearing in mind all the normal time bars on applications. My advice would be to make sure that you're making an application not just to SafeDeposits, but for the first tier tribunal, if you think you have a justified claim in excess of the deposit. Yeah. Because what we can do, although you can't argue the same pot of money over two forums, what we can do is, if you're going through the FTT and SafeDeposits, we can put a hold on your dispute with us until the FTT has concluded, and we would consider the FTT outcome as part of your evidence submission if you give it to us. We can only work with what we have, but you certainly don't have to choose between the two. That option is available. But like Sarah was saying there, the time limitations, we don't have any in safe deposits. The legislation is just that you request the deposit back as soon as is reasonably practical, is what the law says. Whereas the FTT is at 3 months, they have.
3 months, yeah, it's a 3 months time bar. So we wouldn't like you to be sitting waiting for safe deposits to reach a decision and miss out on any future claim for the first tier tribunal because of the time bar.
Yeah. Speaking of time, thank you very much for yours this morning. We'd carved out about 45 minutes just for questions that we'd had ahead of time, and we'll kind of come up to that. There's a few have come in while we've been speaking, Sarah, if you don't mind if I go over them.
Yeah,
if
sure.
there's any other questions, you can either pop your hand up if you want to ask them verbally or pop them down in the chat, and we'll get Sarah to answer them before she goes today. So the first one we have, let me just check. Let's see. So Maggie is asking, if there is no inventory done beforehand, do you accept other evidence to prove the condition of the property when the current tenant moved in? For example, the statement from the previous tenant.
To be honest, we wouldn't necessarily place a lot of reliability on a statement from a previous tenant. We sometimes see tenants going round and getting statements from other tenants or from friends who they have, who they've known who've moved into a property either before or after them. And obviously that kind of evidence is not nearly as reliable as a check-in inventory. So while we would not disregard it, while we would pay some attention to it, I think, you know, based on the other evidence that's available, it's not likely to carry the same weight as an inventory or photographs or even an invoice for work carried out at the start of a tenancy.
Michelle has asked, if a deposit has been returned, a percentage to the tenant and percentage to the landlord, can the tenant then disagree with the amounts after the funds have been returned? No, I'm sorry. Once the funds have been returned, that's it. You know, you don't have recourse through the tenancy deposit scheme. If you think that something has happened and that perhaps the landlord has taken more than they should have done, or that, you know, if you've got a shared arrangement, a shared flat with tenants, and you don't feel that the share between the tenants is right, then that's for you to resolve together outside of the deposit scheme. That's not something that we can get involved in. Even prior to adjudication, the legislation has no allowance for us to settle any disagreements between tenants themselves either, and we'll just have to do that independently. Even if awards were given to the tenants before the funds were released, as part of the review mechanism, the appeals process we have, it's not an error in fact or law. And we would count the tenants as one and all, they're joint and several, so it's an award to the tenants. And what we follow on the database, when you put your proposal for repayment in, when the tenant responds, if you were to put, say, a 50-50 split between the tenants and the tenant logs in and says, actually, it's 75-25, we follow their distribution lead. So automatically, if Sarah was to give them an award, our system would automatically apply this 75-25 split between the two, behind the scenes anyway, because that's how the tenants have told us. Because as landlords, you know, you may assume they paid it 50-50, but there might actually be something different going on in the background, and that's why we follow the tenant's lead anyway. So that shouldn't really come up. And they can't request a review because they simply don't like the award that they've been given. We can't do that. It's got to be an error in fact or law. I can't see that we've had any other questions come through. Sarah, let me see, Nicola. So Nicola's asking, if a property wasn't professionally clean upon move-in, if the tenant leaves the property in a worse condition than they move in, can cleaning be deducted? Would that be dependent on the detail in the check-in and check-out?
Yes, is the short answer to that. It depends on what the check-in and check-out shows. Are you suggesting, Nicola, that you've got an invoice or something like that to show it's been professionally cleaned at the start of the tenancy?
You guys, honestly, it's free to unmute now if you want to have a chat.
You can unmute and talk to me.
Nicola says no, not at the start.
Okay, okay. No, we're really looking at the check-in and check-out report to make an assessment.
No problem. We have another one from, oops, a big one. This is from Fiona. Hello, I do property inspections, and although try to be very thorough, I'm human and occasionally miss things. Recently, I've carried out a checkout report and noted a few minor issues of damage, but overall the property was left in excellent condition and cleaned to an excellent standard. Curtains and blinds were left in excellent condition, and the agent has got in touch to say the landlord is not happy as I've missed the fact curtains have been changed. Looking back at the inventory and the checkout report, I accept this and will email to confirm they have been changed. I do note that the curtains are actually better quality. They're thick, lined floor length and tweed type wool blind in the bathroom, almost all new condition. Plastic curtain rails are replaced with wooden rails, and the tenant absolutely should have sought written permission to change, but interested to know how a claim would be viewed in this circumstance. So clearly, that although items have been changed, they've been left better than what was actually there to begin with.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting one, and Fiona, I have every sympathy for you. You know, everybody's human, and I've seen lots of instances where inventory clerks have been pulled up over things and that's been submitted as evidence. So I have every sympathy for you, because there's so much to take in when you do a property inspection, and when you do a check-in inventory in particular, you don't have a crystal ball as to what's likely to come up at the end of a tenancy. So getting everything down is a real challenge. So it's an interesting one where and it depends very much how a claim is framed. If you've got a situation where you've got better quality curtains at the end of a tenancy, the tenant has still breached their obligations under the tenancy agreement, as you say, by changing the curtains without permission, if that was the case, if we can't evidence that they were changed with permission. And the landlord very much may want to have the original curtains back. And so we would still take into account that breach of obligations, whether or not the landlord has suffered a financial loss, the fact that the tenant is obliged to return the property in the same condition and with the same contents as at the start of the tenancy. So we would take all that information into account, and it may be that we would make an award, even if it's just for rehanging the original curtains if they're still available. Depends very much how the award is framed, but we would take that into account. We would also take into account any amendments that you make to a report that have been submitted to the landlord and agent as part of the evidence pack.
Perfect. Fiona says, thank you. It's interesting to know how these situations are viewed.
Thank you, Fiona. An interesting question.
It's quite good as well when these things crop up, like something's noted after the fact. The checkout inspections, like the final inspection of the property. And again, these are good candidates for self-resolution. All these little nuanced ones, or the what ifs, or ones that don't quite fit neatly into boxes. These are ones worth having a chat about pre-adjudication, and we're probably more likely to resolve them without having to go through the full evidence submission and all that sort of stuff. This is bringing us up sort of to the close of the session today. If anybody wants to ask another question, go for it. What I'll do is I'll let Sarah go just now, but I will leave the session open for a little while. I'll leave it for about 5-10 minutes, and if any other questions come through in the chat box, we'll get Sarah to answer them and we'll send them out by email to the people who've attended today. I know sometimes people feel a little bit shy about committing things with an audience. So I'll turn the cameras and the volume and all that off, but I'll keep a wee eye down on one side. Thank you all for coming today. I hope you found this really helpful. Sarah, if you had something you would like people to take away with them today, sort of a closing thought, what would it be?
I wish you'd prepared me for that, Paula.
Where's the fun?
I feel like I should say something very kind of deep now. But I suppose for me, my biggest frustration as an adjudicator is I sometimes see cases where I would make an award if the evidence was better. And I think it's really just for landlords and agents to know that really the quality of the adjudication that you get is very much based on the quality of the evidence that you put in. So if you expect an award, you've got to really justify that award. So That's the take home for
Put
me.
put the effort in. Put the effort
Yeah.
in. Thank you for joining us today, Sarah.
Thank you very much. I'll leave you to it.
Yeah, this session booked out pretty quick, so it's likely we'll do it again at some point in the future. So if you feel through time you've got another few questions, send them over to us and we'll keep them until we run this the second time, and we'll do it again probably in the next quarter or so. Webinars have proven to be super popular. I'll let you all go now. Thank you for that hour of your time.
Thank you. See you later.
See you later, Sarah. And like I said, I'll turn the camera and the audio off. If you've got any questions, pop them on and I'll keep a wee eye on it. But have a good day, everyone.